Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Make Love Easy, where we help successful, badass, multi-ethnic, entrepreneurial men skill up and thrive in dating, relating, and mating. I have the great privilege, pleasure, and honor today of bringing to you someone whose work has been interesting, intriguing, and controversial to me for many years. Tell me how you pronounce your name. I don't think I've ever spoken it aloud. Go ahead.
My name is Aly Light. My Russian name is Alyona, which also means one of the illumination, also means light. So when I cut it into short Aly, it flowed a lot better for me.
I'm glad I didn't hazard a guess or an attempt at
Mhm.
a long name pronunciation. So tell me your story. Uh, who are you in the realm of sex and intimacy, and how did you come to be an expert and an authority in that realm?
Yeah, thank you so much, Louis, for having me. It's such a pleasure to speak on this platform and to share these important messages. So welcome, everyone. My name is Aly Light, and I am a tantric intimacy expert. I am a sex educator and a modern day temple priestess. My work has taken me through my own personal development of self-growth, spirituality, sitting through medicine circles, going into healing works of yoga, energy work, sound healing. And eventually I knew that there was more. I knew that there was more to discover about myself than just drinking medicine and sitting in these higher vibrational states of love and light. And that's when my life took me deep into the descension into my body and into understanding that as a woman, I hold a portal in my body of my womb through which life comes into this planet. And so I started learning from my womb space and sitting in the void and really listening to the wisdom of my body, which then took me through the journey of exploring sexuality and all the shadows and all the suppression that I have held for many years in that area. And then eventually, one seed after the other, I met a tantric temple priestess, and she became my guide and reminded me of what is possible, and in a way gave me a revealing of who I am as her mirror to me. And so it's been 6 years now. I have become a tantric intimacy expert here in South Florida, Miami area. And over the last 6 years, I've been very intentional to bring consciousness into the field of sex work. I think sex work is one of the biggest shadows that we have on our planet, next to pornography. And so I am here with love and light and consent and boundaries and education, helping people navigate these realms with more power, more confidence, and with education that we were never provided as we were growing up. And through my own journey, I was able to have my own sexual awakening, which a lot of people refer to as Kundalini awakening. And for me, once I became multi-orgasmic, I knew that this is something that I had to teach to other people because it wasn't something I just came automatically programmed with. And so I didn't get my first big tantric orgasm until I was 28. And at 28, that's when my journey really took on. And I knew that this was my work, this is my passion, and this is what I wanted to help people come to as part of their self-development journey. And so here I am now, sharing the voice and the truth and inspiring others to also walk into this path with confidence and strength.
Epic, delightful. So what that brings us to the place we were at. We were in the green room and we're talking about just spirituality and sexuality. And one of my dear friends who appears to be thriving sexually, but not having any sex. And I was surprised and delighted to hear you mention a couple things. You were like, oh yeah, the devil exploits the wounds inside of relationship. And then you also said that his communion, my friend, who talks about like just not craving sex, he did 2 years of celibacy, incidentally, before he met his current wife, and how the intimacy and the depth of connection with divinity can be so fulfilling for a person that they no longer crave these lower chakra things. So the question we're here to orbit is, what does it mean to thrive sexually? And what a strange and interesting example to start with. Like, I can say personally, I've never experienced yet. Maybe I have, and maybe I've just not classified it as such, an experience of quote unquote God or source that was so vivid, visceral, and persistent that it would lead me to say, oh, well, I have no interest in orgasm or touch or sex in that way ever again. But I'm curious, what does thriving sexually mean for you and the people that you serve? Like, what does that look like, generally speaking?
Yeah, that's quite a full question to unpack there. And, there's so many ways where we can start. But to leave your friend in the container of, yes, we can have an extremely fulfilling connection with God, divinity through our own body, through awakening our own energy, and to circulate this energy through the heart centers where it becomes so divine and so full and wholesome, where you no longer desire perhaps to engage anymore in the physical sexuality. However, your question is specifically, what does it mean to have a thriving sexuality? So I'm going to drop us down to the root and to the sacral chakras where physical sexuality actually takes place. And so from my years of studies and understanding, we have to begin at the root chakras and understanding that a lot of people hold traumas from childhood. From age of 1 to 7 years old, if you had experienced some sort of sexual trauma, molestation, abuse, rape, something that was sexually traumatic, or even not maybe majorly traumatic, but it did have an effect, that is a way for you to start looking at how does your sexuality, how has it been shaped? Your earlier concepts of sexuality shapes your understanding. And then as we move from 7 to now into later years of teenage time, this is where a lot of people get introduced into pornography, and they either have conversations with their parents about health, sex, what is it not, or they don't. And so now our concepts of sexuality are beginning to form from things that we see in pornography or conversations that people have, in the boys' locker room, girls' locker room. So unless you had really wonderful parents who set you down and said, hey, this is penis, this is vagina, this is what happens during sex, this is what anatomy is, this is what is pleasure, most likely individuals don't have the proper foundation. And so the foundation of thriving sexuality, I like to use the blueprint of the chakra system to talk about different layers of sex. And so we're looking at the root chakra. In order to have thriving sexuality, we have to feel safe. And safety is a number one reason why a lot of women cannot access heightened states of orgasmic bliss, is because internally they have a trauma or they don't feel safe in their bodies or with their partners. So foundation one, creating safety and understanding within our root chakras. Then as we level up, we move into the second chakra, which is our sexuality, our emotions, our creativity. And here is where men or women have to address their relationship with their genitals. Questions that I ask my clients earlier on in your growing up: what were the conversations around genitals? What ideas did you receive from your parents, from your guardians, from the church, from the society, right? And a lot of the concepts, especially in religious families, were things like, don't touch it, or don't play with it, or, don't look there, it's not good. Don't look at your nephew's pee-pee, don't touch yourself in public. And so we've been programmed with these really subtle, but as with children, we receive this information really deeply in our subconscious, is that something is bad down there. We have these genitals, we have desire to feel things. And even as young children, we experience pleasure. But what happens is, as children, our pleasure is innocent. It's not corrupted. And so as children, 3, 4, 5 years old, we start to explore our sexuality, and maybe we want to be curious with our friends, or maybe we rub on our toys, but our parents come and shut it down. So right there is a point of, this is bad, something I'm not supposed to do, but instinctually you want to do it. You want to touch yourself because it feels good. And so then that programming gets settled, and then you move into the third chakra, which is your power, your confidence, your self-esteem. And this is something that we get to develop from age of 16 into our mid-20s. And once we start to have sexual experiences, we start to practice things we like, things we don't like. And what happens with our confidence is, again, is if we have not had the right structure of education, most of us learn what is sex through pornography. And so for men, sexuality has been witnessed as something like go, 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 with goal orient, with the point being to get to a release, to an orgasm, ejaculation for the man. And a lot of women see sexuality as something that they have to give to the man, something that is for the man's pleasure, and something that doesn't really go into the depth of what does it take for a woman to actually experience pleasure. And this is where, we got the root chakra, the sacral, the solar plexus. So that's like the physical containment of understanding sexuality. And so for tantric sexuality, eventually we will rise into the heart where we have to meet ourselves. We have to meet ourselves through healing the lower chakra centers and through actually exploring our bodies on our own to understand, what do I like? What makes me feel good? What kind of touch do I like? What type of kisses do I like? So then when you come together in a union with a beloved, you can give them the blueprint to your pleasure so they don't have to guess. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people don't have the power, again, the solar plexus chakra, the confidence, in order to vocalize what they like, what they don't like. And another problem with women is when they have sexual experiences from 16 to mid-20s, they have a lot of experiences that are very unpleasant. They are either penetrated before they're ready, they receive penetration that's too fast, too rigid, uncomfortable. They have painful intercourse, which they assume is okay. And to any woman that's listening on the show, I am telling you right now, it is not okay to have pain. It is absolutely your birthright to have pleasure, to have ecstasy, and to have bliss in your body during sexuality. And so if you're experiencing pain, it is a sign that something is not right. And we need to slow down, we need to stop, we need to take a moment to check in. And so part of thriving sexuality is understanding and education, which we have to take with ourselves. We have to understand the programming that has led us to having a unfulfilling sexuality or having experiences that were traumatic, in which we didn't say no, in which we didn't say slow down, didn't say stop, right? And when we rise through the chakra system more into the throat, so the throat chakra is actually connected to the sacral. So the tongue, the area behind the tongue, actually drips down through the esophagus, down, and actually meets the tip of the clitoris. And so when we enter into more sacred sexual realms, into more tantric sexuality, the amount of vocals that comes through the woman's sounds, and men's as well, but women are a lot more expressive, starts to become very angelic. It starts to become like a unique frequency, which actually helps to attune the beloveds into a more sacred sexual experience. And so if the woman doesn't have her throat power, and again, throat can only be activated if we activated our solar plexus. And so as you're starting to see my blueprint of linking sacred sexuality to the chakras, is that we have to start at the bottom as we work our way up. And we can address our hearts and see ourselves fully if we have trauma in the lower centers. But eventually, when you do the work and the energy can start to rise, we can express our truth through our voice. We now can say yes, no, more of that, less of that, and really feel confident in our power to claim our pleasure without any shame or guilt, right? And then when we enter third eye center, this is the place from which a lot of people start to experience very deep, enlightening experiences where we begin to circuit the energy. And so visualize this in sacred union, the man's penis, which in Tantra we refer to as lingam, which means the wand of consciousness, all right? And then woman's vagina is referred to as yoni, which means the sacred space. And so picture this, a wand of consciousness enters the sacred space. Now question is, how much consciousness is in the wand of light? And is that consciousness fully dropped from a place of heart? Or is that consciousness coming from a place of ego, from a place of lust, from a place of taking. And if it's any of those three, then you won't be able to enter into a sacred union circuitry. However, when both come into a divine union and connect through a place of love, and then you bring your third eyes together, or you kiss and you connect your tongues together, now you begin to create this circuit. And these energies are very subtle. So if you begin to practice in the beginning, you might not feel much, and that's okay. The more pure your channels become, the more you'll be able to feel. And eventually, when you begin to circuit this energy, you actually don't even need to move. You don't need to be like pounding and like having hardcore intercourse. You can literally find stillness. And a man with his intention would send his consciousness into the yoni. And then the yoni would inhale and receive, because the woman is naturally a receiver. And so then she receives, he gives, and then they begin to channel. And so somewhere in that moment is when people have enlightenment experiences, psychedelic experiences, trance-inducing experiences. For me, I call it shamanic sexuality. And so in those places is where we can access the yab-yum, which in tantra is a sacred position where a woman sits in the lap of the man, and they enter into each other, and they can hold the position and really just feel the energies. And so to have a thriving sexuality, we need to address all the things that I've mentioned, and to eventually strive to rise our energy up towards higher centers, so that we can truly learn how to make love to each other and to give each other to one another, versus just fucking, taking, lust, needing to satisfy the primal, more lower chakra experience, which is too fine. Sometimes we just want to have a primal fuck, right? And part of Tantra is that there's no shaming of any type of exploration. It's just, from my perspective, if we want to rise into higher levels, we have to transcend the lust and see each other as the divinity, so that we can access more unity with God and divine through seeing each other as that.
Mm. Magnificent and elegantly articulated. I really appreciate all of that. It leads me with a couple questions. So what I'm gathering is that there's a full flow throughout the entire nervous system that was dammed up by trauma, by programming, by experiences that were non-optimal, and that sexuality possesses a quality of being intrinsically sacred when we embrace it in its full nature.
Correct.
And one of my teachers, Shinzen Young, he said, there's an innate momentum towards enlightenment. If we're living life with mindfulness and equanimity, if we're being fully present with what is and not resisting it, we will, and we cannot help but move towards enlightenment. So in the same way, I look at the flow of sexual energy and I'm like, oh, the extent to which people get hooked on these lower chakra-oriented lust, taking, etc., is the extent to which the full truth of their sexuality has been bastardized and betrayed and violated. So when someone's safe, when they've healed their trauma, the energy starts to move up, and it becomes less about like the sex we see in porn and more about activating our capacity for states of incredible bliss. And so it's interesting to me in that, because in the past I went from socially awkward to sexually expressed and liberated, a Casanova period. Mm-hmm. And as I came out the other side of it, after having lots of adventures and experiences, I realized how fragmented it not only made me, but was the result of inside of me. That the reason I was settling and you can see it in Neil Strauss's book, The Truth, an Uncomfortable Book About Relationships. Like, he spends the whole first half of the book thinking, oh, I'm polyamorous and I just love sex and I'm sex positive. When under the surface, the trauma was so great that his very truthful seeming thoughts, oh, I'm sexually responsive, I just want a good fuck, and I'm responding to a woman who's not my current partner, that there was this massive architecture and infrastructure of trauma that was causing him to act out in ways that were harmful ultimately to him, his relationships, his partner, and everyone who he had sex with.
Mm.
So my journey went from suppression to expression to now a commitment to exquisite alignment, SEX. And now you've painted a really great picture. You've built a map of what we talk about in Make Love Easy is like the overlap between sexual health and identity and vitality and an awakened identity. So like it becomes my curiosity is how to have sex in a way that's not harming you or someone else, knowing and being aware that if you follow the ego's programming and desires for a good fuck, sometimes it's going to be pure unconsciousness causing karma and pain. And meaning, should we, instead of sowing our wild oats and throwing our sexual energy, the energy of purpose and creativity and dharma on this planet when it circulates fully through our nervous system, should we squander it for the sake of short-term pleasure and chasing ass? Or should we do the work to prioritize healing ourselves fully so that we can experience the full capacity of acting and choosing from our wholeness rather than from our wounding? And I know it's kind of a loaded question, but that's kind of where I'm at. So what do you hear?
Well, what I heard you say is ask a question, and you also gave an answer in that. And so I feel
My
that,
answer. I'm curious about yours. Yeah.
yeah, I have been living in a really conscious relating exploration over the last couple of years, ever since attending ISTA, International Institute of Temple Arts. I've done 2 levels. I have been presented with many blueprints that has given me power and confidence in order to navigate these situations with more grace. And so I think it's important to honor everybody where they're at and to educate them and give them tools. And so there is nothing wrong with wanting to have sex and wanting to explore. And for men especially, you know, they want to express their love through penetration. That's actually something psychologically men give through their conscious wand. They want to penetrate, they want to give love, right? Whereas women receive love through their hearts. And so while a man might want to, you know, have lots of sex to show his love and affection, a woman might need words of affirmation or emotional quality time in order to have her heart full before she can fully receive his love. And so I think that when it comes to dating and finding partners, I'm actually learning right now from Alison Armstrong, and she has 30 years of research on relationships. I just listened to her book about how men and women are different. And the thing is, we just don't communicate. We think like women communicate a lot and then men get scared, but then men, they communicate and they talk to themselves, but they don't express to women. And so there's nothing wrong if somebody is in a time in their life where they're not ready for a committed relationship, to have a committed sexual partnership with someone. But it's of integrity for that man when he's dating to be upfront with a woman to say, hey, I'm really looking right now for a sexual partner. I'm looking to explore my sexuality. I have lots of energy and I want to give and I want to receive. And here's what I'm available for. Versus when we're in the shadow of our desires and he goes on dates and he promises women some future that he knows he's not going to be available for, that's when we go in the shadow. And so this is why the work has to take place in our lower chakras, root, sacral, and solar plexus, is so that we can find our confidence and our voice and our truth. So when we're dating, if you're a woman and you're looking to find your life partner, you're upfront and you're letting a man know, hey, I'm looking for my life partner, or hey, I'm looking to have children, or hey, I'm not looking to get married. I want to travel the world and I want to make love in all the tropical places. And what I think people don't realize is that authenticity is sexy. And authenticity will get rid of and filter out people in your dating pool who are not there to match your frequency and match your desires. So it's okay to want to have sexual exploration. Just be honest and upfront about it so that you're not accumulating, like you said, the negative karma, so that both are in the light. And that's part of conscious sex. And I'm actually working on a book right now called Conscious Sex Ed, so that we're bringing things into the light. So it's not in the shadow. You know, women, they tend to manipulate men. Like she'll find a guy and he's the catch and she wants him no matter what. But she sees perhaps there's things that are already out of alignment, but she will ignore that and she will manipulate him with mostly sex, with mostly, you know, her feminine energy, and lure him into a trap of perhaps eventually getting pregnant and having a baby. But then that if that man never wanted a baby with you and you end up having a baby with him, this is what I call in my work oopsie pregnancies. And this is how a lot of children are born already traumatized. So this work, it's not even about just sex, Lewis. It's actually like at the root of my passion and my purpose is the preservation of sacred family units, which starts with our internal sovereignty, confidence, and awakening of our truth and our desires, bringing all of that into the light, and then finding somebody else who can match that desire and that frequency, and then consciously procreate, consciously choose to procreate and bring life into this world, not oopsie pregnant, right? Because understanding that creates a lot of just karma, like you said. And so did that answer? I think that was pretty good.
It certainly began to. I love it. What I got was don't judge where anyone's at in their journey. Definitely. And then there is a profound responsibility whenever someone has sex, because children can be created. And if you're having sex with the wrong partner or the wrong time for the wrong reasons from the wrong energy, you could pre-traumatize a child. And that's not small potatoes. So like where I'm coming from is in the past 10 years, starting with the Casanova period until now, I had a skill of going really deep with a woman, like in intimacy, emotionally. And I would come out of periods of no sex because of a breakup and a painful relationship previously. And I was choosing, in my estimation, emotionally unavailable, avoidant attached partners. So there's a whole conversation to have about that. And then we would choose consciously to say, oh, we're going to have just a sexual exploration. We're casual. We're not interested in a long-term relationship. And yet, when we chose to have sex, not being aware or responsible for the actual consequences of the act, namely cords created, and emotional and energetic and neurophysiological processes that we could no longer control, our conscious desires were actually false compared to what we were actually seeking. So I have skepticism on my own, a generous, healthy skepticism, I believe, on mine and anyone's self-report about what they actually desire, because trauma, domestication, programming, and pain are so strong, so subtle, and so insidious that I think most people in hookup culture are stumbling drunkenly into situations based on neurochemical releases that are not in alignment with their highest choice spiritually or emotionally or energetically. And you can see this from just what you pointed to. I mean, not just 40, 50% of marriages end in divorce, but oopsie babies and complicated co-parenting situations where it's all dysfunctional from all angles. And yeah, I agree with Alison Armstrong and the amazing development of men, right? There's the page, knight, prince, and there's a period where men are just going to want to get paid and get laid. And that's a thing. Like I'm okay with that. And I think part of my bias is that I'm middle prince. Like I'm wise enough to know I'm capable enough to provide for a queen and build a kingdom with her, but haven't met someone who's been available yet, circumstantially, energetically, emotionally, to receive the full depth of emotional and energetic penetration that I can provide. So being fully upfront about my own bias and the place that I'm inquiring from. So yeah, I mean, and that's the trickiest piece, is consciously my last partner, the one the whole new book is based on, our relationship of, started with, hey, we're both not in a place to have a relationship, so let's just be casual sex friends. And we started subconsciously taking, giving, and receiving the energetic, emotional, social nutrition of a relationship under the camouflage of we just want sex, we just want a good fuck. Until eventually we entered a polyamorous container and then a monogamous container. And as I look back, I look at myself and I say, oh, if I hadn't chosen to just pursue fucking casual sex, then all that pain and suffering of choosing a partner who wasn't ultimately available emotionally could have been prevented. And I could have used that energy differently. Now, hindsight's 2020, and I learned what I was meant to learn, which is not all that glitters is gold, not all that if I walk up to a woman who thinks she wants casual sex, I'm not sure that I can trust her. Even if she's done all the fucking work to clean and clear her chakras, because we're humans and self-reports are often idiocy compared to where we're coming from at the nervous system level and the superconscious level in our energy. So if someone had that realm of awareness, what would you tell them about how to have sex responsibly, how to choose situations and partners responsibly, knowing all of that, knowing whoever you have sex with, you're fucking making accord with. You're entering into agreement with their entire world, and you're taking on physical and energetic karma, and you don't have to. Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your journey and where you've been and being a little vulnerable about the story and what has taken place. I think that's really powerful. So as you were speaking, that what was landing and coming through for me was an understanding that there is no such thing as casual sex. As we evolve, humans, we are beyond just the physical body, flesh and bones. We are also spiritual beings on a evolutionary fast track. And what I'm seeing as part of my encoding blueprint that I'm landing on this planet is conscious relationship choice and understanding that nothing is casual and that we have to level up our relationships. Part of enlightenment is, like leveling up your health and nutrition, spiritual practices and meditation, conscious sexuality, conscious relationships. And so for me, what I've been practicing lately with my beloved is a conscious relationship dynamic blueprint, where we are very intentional and we say like, okay, these are our agreements, these are our desires. We're going to press play for, let's say, 30 days, 2 months, 6 months, a year, and then we're going to check in. And so at the end of our set time frame, we check in. And the check-in allows us to choose whether or not we want to keep moving forward. And so I'm part of a tantric love court community here in Miami. And so on December 21st, which is a winter solstice Yuletide, we do a handfasting ceremony. And handfasting ceremony basically gives us a whole year to be with each other, to celebrate love, light, and delight. And then next year, December, we will check in and see, hey, do we want to keep moving forward? Do we need to adjust things? How are things going? And so if we create these containers for each other where we're not forever till death do us part, or even worse, unknowingly, how long are we in this casual dynamic for? If we say, okay, we'll check in 2 months, that gives both of you, especially the feminine, the containment that she's seeking to fully feel and allow you to love her and for her to receive your love. For a woman, from Alison Armstrong's work, it's hard for a woman to feel the depth of love if she's uncertain about the timeline of the relationship. So usually it's a man who's like either planning the next date or planning a vacation in a month or planning to take her to his parents' house for Christmas. And she's like, oh, Christmas, I have 6 months to love him and feel him, versus like he doesn't call, she doesn't know. A woman is not going to open up her feeling without that containment. So part of our awakening in the relational dynamic is having these uncomfortable conversations, but most importantly, having these tools. Like I sometimes feel frustration in my partnership right now because I'm the one who's bringing these tools. But sometimes I'm like, I don't want to. Sometimes I just want to relax and be my soft, cute feminine. But I also know if I just am cute, soft feminine, it will be really watery and very uncertain because my beloved doesn't have these tools. So it's part of our job and part of our holding the torch for humanity as light workers to bring this information forth, to hold people's hands as we both walking through the mystery and the darkness of light, of life, and to have these conversations and to establish these dynamics that ultimately help us feel safer to lean into love, whether it's love for 1 month or love for 10 years. And that's up to the individuals.
Masterfully done. I'm loving our dance here. So moving towards not a conclusion, but the end of this episode, because you're absolutely welcome back. There's clearly so much wisdom and grounded expertise based on experience here that it's like, wow, what a powerhouse. I appreciate you. So to bookmark some things, like in my relationship, we did the agreements and we did a specific container. The challenge came in when we committed to a much deeper, longer container, and that caused her nervous system to start having reactions. Like, hey, I'm in it to win it with you and you're it for the rest of my life. And then she said yes. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then a month later, she was like, I'm not sure, actually. And so at that point, it became a question of, well, I poured all of this energy and intensity and intention into the sexual dynamic, into the spiritual dynamic, into the emotional depth. And it was actually the third partner to say yes to marrying me and then to back out. Now it's on me because I chose avoidant partners. So I now know to look for those red flags. So I think the satisfaction and the capacity to engage in conscious relating depends on us choosing the right partner at the right time. And for me, like I have incredibly deep empathy and I open my heart full on, all in with somebody as if they're the first, last, the only, and the most important partner I'll ever have. So it's difficult to conceive of me personally inhabiting a container that's like, oh, it's 5 months or it's a year. Like there's like choosing for there to be a conclusion point because of how deep I've gone. And then maybe that's, anxious attachment style. And yet I'm curious, like, I ask my men, I'm like, would you rather be in a partnership where you experience the pain of a breakup or one where you get to be with them forever? And they always say, well, I'd rather be with somebody that I don't have to experience the pain of a breakup with.
I like the breakup.
Well, that will be our teaser trailer for our next conversation, because like that might be a personality or a flavor or a taste difference. And where I come from in Earthwaking, their belief is like, well, you have one person, and if you find that right person, if you've done the spiritual work to heal yourself to be ready for that one person, then you don't have to suffer in that way ever again. You don't have to experience the conflict or the chaos or the mismatch or the dysfunction that leads to the wobble or the breakup. And so we won't answer that question here because we want to give people a good cliffhanger for when you come back. But in the meantime, what I think is absolutely clear that everybody should receive is, how do we do the work to clear and clean out those bottom chakras so that the energy can flow and start to practice more conscious sexuality and intimacy? And how can you help, and how can people find more from you?
Absolutely. So my work is all about, I call myself a life force activator, and I do so through shamanic tantric body work. And so part of my work with activating these energies is so the energy can flow and do the work in a way for you. And so if you are in Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, I welcome you to come see me in my temple for a 2-hour incredible session. And then if you're a couple, I do 3-hour couples rituals where I take couples through tantric intimacy, through connection work, and where I teach couples how to do tantric activations on each other. And for our next conversation, I would love to talk about the importance of couples learning how to give tantra massage to each other, so then they can learn how to be healers for one another. Instead of just fucking, they can actually start healing. And so that's going to be a really juicy conversation. But you guys can find me on sacredmusetantra.com. And again, I'm located in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And if you want to start at home, I would welcome to type in on Google Kundalini activating meditations and to start tapping into these subtle energies and meditating and visualizing energies moving up. However, it's a little more challenging if you do have unaddressed trauma to just moving these energies. So be very gentle, get into your yoga, get into your hips, stop masturbating constantly. If you're a man, stop watching porn. If you're a man and a woman, for a woman, most importantly, to feel confident in her body, to feel confident with the way her yoni looks, with the way she wants to desire pleasure. And once that confidence awakens, you'll have a much lighter time to address any of the wounds that are below. And so the work is powerful and it takes time. Be gentle, be slow, and we're here to support you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the gift of your presence, your time, paving a path to deeper awakening and awareness and responsibility and sexuality and intimacy. And yeah, any final thoughts, any gold nuggets to leave people with, or you complete? Either way is fine.
Yeah, I feel complete before starting any new topics. I feel this conversation has been really powerful, really strong. And thank you to everyone who's listening and who's doing this work. This is so needed. And this is not just about you. This is about doing this work for our parents, for our grandparents, because they had a lot less information and a lot of less access to this. And so thank you to all of you guys. You are important, you matter, and you're not alone. We're here doing this work together collectively.
Thank you, friend. Appreciate you.